Hello, fellow Megatenists. Masayuki Doi is a character, which is funny because he's a character designer, eh? Shin Megami Tensei IV is, I think, the entry point for a lot of people's introduction to Masayuki Doi. And that was with some controversy, because when it was first revealed that it was not Kazuma Kaneko behind the new art for the characters, there was some drama. In this video, we're gonna examine as much as I can find about his history at Atlus and his design logic and what we think about it going forward, because there's a lot of stuff that people just don't know. I do want to preface this with the fact that I could barely find any actual Doi history, so we will not be able to ever make a full Doi commentary video or documentary unless they actually release a Shin Megami Tensei VV art book or a Doi art book. Then we might have more information, more juice, but currently we don't. Without further ado, Masayuki Doi was born February 24th, 1976. February 24th is also the same day that Shigenori Sorajima was born. Different year though. Doi was born in Yokohama City, Kanagawa Prefecture. In college, he studied fashion design at a fashion university. He also received a huge job offer from a huge fashion design company, but he turned it down. He turned it down because he was a fan of Atlus ever since he played Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei when he was in elementary school. So, upon graduating, he decided to join Atlus. For the hiring process, Doi was interviewed by both Kazuma Kaneko and Shigenori Sorajima. While reviewing his art, Kaneko asked Doi if he did not like drawing backgrounds, and Doi agreed, yeah, I don't like drawing backgrounds. He said that was just one of the things he was not very good at. So of course, Kazuma Kaneko would make it his mission to assign Doi background design duties. One of the factors Doi presumed was the reason he was hired was due to Sorajima looking for 2D artists who could work under him. Kind of like how Kazuma Kaneko created an art studio essentially comprised of Sorajima, as well as Megumi Shiraishi and a couple of other artists who didn't really end up making it into his inner circle. The presumption was that Sorajima was also doing that, which we got confirmation of, where later on the P Studio art team was formed. I have a link for that video in the description. Doi's first job that he had was painting the bust-up illustrations for the Persona 2 game, as well as designing the beautiful tarot cards from that game. But soon he was strong-armed into working on 3D projects, and that was due to the fact that they didn't have a 3D artist, and Doi didn't really have any experience doing that, but he wanted to keep his job, so he learned how to do it. For Shin Megami Tensei 3, he did tons of background graphics, as well as for Shin Megami Tensei 3 Maniacs. This could mean that a lot of the beautiful aesthetics that we attribute to Nocturne might have come from Masayuki Doi himself. And part of why I say that is because he also did a lot of concept art for Nocturne. He would then work on backgrounds for Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2, and was the lead for backgrounds in the Raido games. And for Raido, he really leaned into doing intense research on the era to make the buildings era accurate. Here's what he says about that. At first, I tried to faithfully recreate the Taisho era based on historical research, but considering that the game is set in a fictitious era, and that we wanted to create a worldview unique to Atlus, we came to the conclusion that simply reproducing the architecture of the past would be very uninteresting. So, with some advice from Kazuma Kaneko, we decided to add some fictional elements to the actual Taisho architecture to give it a little bit of Atlus flavor. For example, there are statues of demons on the railings of bridges. And that's hilarious because I never noticed that playing Raido 1 or 2. I think this is a good way to approach things, and I like that Kaneko's mentorship included room for Doi to explore and think creatively. He then got a bigger role as character designer for Caduceus Z, 2 Super Swords, or Trauma Center Second Opinion, released in 2006. He would then continue to be responsible for the character work for the Trauma Center series, becoming the art director by the time that Trauma Team came out. Then in 2012, he would go back to Persona 2 for Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, where he did new character illustrations. I do want to say again that Doi designed the amazing Persona 2 tarot cards, which in my opinion are the best tarot cards that the Persona games have, and it would be super cool if they released those officially. For the Persona 2 Eternal Punishment PSP port, Doi did the new character art, and he said that he tried to make it look as close to the original art as possible, so he paid close attention to giving it a lot of character accurate details. He designed new characters for the new scenario, and that was the cop, the guy that works at Club Zodiac, and the talking cat. For the cop, he went ahead and tried to make her look subtly unique by adding just a little bit of information to make you know that she's a detective, but also make her look like a interesting character. For the guy that works at Club Zodiac, he gave his clothes stars and galaxies, which Again, hint that he's working at Club Zodiac. Zula, the talking cat, was originally just going to be a regular talking Abyssinian, but they decided to make him anthropomorphic so that he could stand out as a character. And he also has fish on his jacket, which denote his military rank. Doi would also design a Cthulhu-inspired character, but he doesn't talk about the character's design logic because he didn't want to spoil the game. So if we look at it so far, he kind of earned his keep by doing whatever he needed to do and also working positions that he wasn't particularly strong at, but it was very apparent that he was able to turn those weaknesses into strengths because, again, Nocturne has some of the best art in the entire Megaten canon. And to know that he possibly contributed to it in ways that we didn't even think about, like with Amala potentially being his design aesthetic, is very interesting, and I really have to give it to Doi. There are some roles that Doi had that I actually don't know what he did exactly. Like for Persona 3 and Persona 3 Fest, he's credited as the character design corporation. And I think that's supposed to be that he designed like the social link character designs because they call it cooperation in like Japan, but I don't know for sure. Doi also worked on Strange Journey, a project I didn't even know he was involved in. Apparently he designed some of the concepts for the game, and a lot of the worldview is based on things that he did as concept designs. And then in 2013, Shin Megami Tensei IV would feature Doi's character design. This project was weird because it was the last game to feature Kazuma Kaneko's hands on it at all in a meaningful way, where Kaneko had a draft of a story that was chopped up and used for Shin Megami Tensei IV as its backbone for the story. And when you read the Shin Megami Tensei IV art book, you'll notice that they constantly reference talking to Kaneko to get his approval on everything. As for Doi's role for Shin Megami Tensei IV, he designed all the characters, the package art, the cover arts for game designs and for the art book. Anything related to promotion, he did that too. Doi's design work for Shin Megami Tensei IV included the samurai costume as well, which was meant to contrast the Mikado attire. Doi's fashion prowess actually shows off quite a bit in Shin Megami Tensei IV. Many of the alternate designs, the alternate outfits that you can wear, were designed by Doi himself, and he stretches his creativity quite a bit, with some things being references to things that he likes, including Kamen Rider, and it is very apparent, but also I think it's tastefully done because a lot of those designs feel like they all fit a really similar design logic, so they fit within the world to some degree, and I like it. By the way, Doi's two favorite characters for Shin Megami Tensei IV are Flynn and Akira. And I gotta repeat that Doi did not design any of the demons for Shin Megami Tensei IV. I actually have a video about that. That's gonna be in the description too, if I remember to put it there. So, in Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse, Doi's consideration was more for a pop art style, and he intended for the cast to look a lot younger. And I think he did a pretty good job, especially with the two primary characters, Nanashi and Pascal. I'm sorry, I forgot the girl's name. And I didn't write her down, I literally wrote Pascal in the script. They look good. They look like actual children in a way that is meaningful, because if that's what he intended, he did a good job. Doi took up demon design as well, and sorry to say there's not that much information about the demon design process for this, or why the guest artists weren't called back. The only information that he gives really is that for Shin Megami Tensei on the whole, they plan out the game, and based on the game's story and its setting and everything, they pick a roster of demons, which is why not every game has the same roster of demons, and why in Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse, not all of the guest designs even return. I'm gonna read a little bit of what Doi had to say about this. He says, "Due to various changes and circumstances, I was assigned the design and creation for demons for this game and onwards. Drawing the demons for Megaten is a very difficult task for me, as I have been a huge fan of Shin Megami Tensei for 30 years, and participated in its development for over 15. In past works, the demon designs have changed over time, and there is a wide range of designs, including those that are faithful to the mythological records and those that are entirely original. It was very difficult to predict where I would land because I would be compared to these countless demon paintings. After many trials and errors, I personally arrived at the idea of reobserving things based on the demon's descriptions. I can't really explain it well, but if there's a demon who's designed as both a cow and a horse, which one should it be? If I don't understand, then the depiction could vary person to person. There are some designs that have strong collective memory for people, so I incorporated a lot of descriptions for such things and tried to draw them in a way that was similar to what my predecessor would have done. I would be happy if the work stays true to the image of Megaten and is finished in a satisfying way. I think this is really interesting because if you break down what he's saying, it sounds a lot like what happened was this was an unexpected change, that maybe perhaps Kaneko was supposed to be involved in some way for Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse, but then he wasn't, because they opened the sentence with, due to the various changes and circumstances, I was assigned the design and creation of demons for this game and onwards. The idea that from this game and onwards, he was dictated this role tells me that this might have been something that happened relatively quickly and it wasn't necessarily planned. And when you pay attention to what he's saying, it sounds very much like he was well aware that people would unfairly criticize him for his small body of work against the hundreds and thousands of Cosmic Kaneko designs that we have. For Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse, he does actually go into detail for some of the different designs that are original to him. For the guest designs that he redid, all he really says is that he tried to enhance them. Sometimes he did make changes that were significant. A good example of that would be for Medusa. Medusa goes from being scary in the original design to being a little more sultry and seductive, and he did that intentionally. That's why she looks a lot more attractive than the original one, because the original one is supposed to be more nightmarish. And then there are some small changes, like for Centaur, the pose is a little different, and he specifically says that the pose was different because simply he thought Merkaba's pose was too similar to it. For a Strange Journey Redux, I think it's really funny because whereas Shin Megami Tensei IV is the one where he only did character designs, in Redux, he only really handled the new demon designs and one single new character. Doi describes his efforts for Strange Journey Redux as being full of him reading books, mythology-related websites, and other resources, which is put together by the person in charge. And in that case, I think it was Eiji Ashida. Then, after sketching, he presents these to the team, and they start discussing what works and what should be changed. It's through this process that the faithfulness of the design to the original mythologies or certain aspects being exaggerated are decided. I think this is very interesting because that explains exactly why Zeus, Demeter, so many demons are the way they are. It's quite literally because of this process. And that's also why when you look at the design materials that we have, you'll see that there are some demon designs, especially within Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse, that look very faithful, and then there's some that are a little abstract, and then there are some that the original design is very faithful, and then the new design is a very strong deviation. If the Strange Journey Redux design team philosophy is exactly the same or similar to what they did for Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse, it explains a lot in my opinion. I think this also just indicates that while he is part of the process for design, that he's open to the feedback of everyone. And it doesn't really read to me like he's being dictated exactly what to do. So I think that the idea that he didn't have a lot of creative freedom is probably not true, because when he talks about the Strange Journey Redux process, he specifies that he would rather be doing background designs. And that to me could have been read as a joke, but it could have been one of those like half jokes where he's saying it, it's funny, but it's also, there's a responsibility that he's not really interested in. And we kind of see that also with the Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse commentary, where he basically says that he's screwed either way, that people are going to criticize him either way. And I think that that sheds a lot of light to what he was thinking and feeling, and it kind of clarifies a lot of what people had to like postulate and guess about. For Shin Megami Tensei V, Doi did much of what he did with the Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey Redux and Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse stuff. A combination of research, feedback from other staff, and choosing how to be faithful or if he wanted to change it from the source material. That resulted in a lot of things, like Eden being essentially an idol versus Finn McCool being very faithful to the original stuff. And it's worth pointing out because those particular designs, it sounds like Eden did get a lot of feedback from other people first, whereas for Finn McCool, he was very firm with what he wanted and he didn't let them actually give him any feedback because he wanted to do what he wanted to do. And there's not really that much else to say about Shin Megami Tensei V's demon design because besides from the commentaries that were released on Twitter, there isn't an official art book and there aren't any interviews with Doi specifically really, so I don't have anything else to say about that. For Shin Megami Tensei VV, we get a lot of new things. We get a couple new humans as well as a couple new demons, and they're all designed by Masayuki Doi. And I can just say right now, I quite like all these new designs outside of two Kadistu. I'll let you figure out which two those are. It's worth noting that throughout these 3 games, we don't really know how much this process has changed or how much each thing weighs, whether or not the feedback weighs more or the faithfulness versus inaccuracy thing matters more. We don't really know. And it's with Shin Megami Tensei VV that I've noticed that his art has been reevaluated. His stance at Atlus has been shifted within the Western landscape. Because overall, for the Japanese fan base, I didn't see that much people being like, I hate Doi. It was more like sometimes people would bring up Kaneko. It was never a thing where people directly insulted him, or at least it wasn't the majority opinion. It seemed like Western fans just strongly missed Kaneko, or were very invested in pitting the two against each other, whereas fans in Japan were more fixated on, I miss Kaneko, I like Doi's art. Though, I will say that for VV, they got to play like a 6-hour demo, and one of the feedbacks that stood out, because a lot of people said it, was that Doi's new demons are very good animation-wise, that the chests are jiggly and that the butt, everything is working really well for people, and I think that's hilarious that that's something people said. And you would think that it was young fans, new fans, but no. Some of the people that said it are people that follow me or people that I know are older, so it was very funny to see like 50-year-old long-time Megaten fan be like, oh yes, I like the new animation jiggles. So all of that being said, I think that this really does provide a clearer picture for Doi's like whole modus operandi, and I think that a lot of his own concerns are very valid. Now that he has more creative control, or that the idea of him not having very much creative control has been a little bit cleared up, I think that we should really look at his art in isolation. It's really important, I think. One thing that we should also consider is that while Doi has some clear misses in my opinion, especially Demeter, I think that it is really worth noting that Kaneko does too. Now that I've been working on the megatenwiki.com quite a bit, I've been scanning a lot of art for Cosmo Kaneko, and something I noticed is that, boy misses a lot. While he does knock it out the park a lot, when you do 1,000 demon designs, you're not gonna make 1,000 amazing demons, especially when you only have like 3 to 6 months to design all of these, on top of the other roles that Cosmo Kaneko did with the story, the demon selection, the research, all that stuff. Kaneko was involved in a myriad of ways, and I don't blame him for some of his art kind of sucking, to be honest, but we should actually be transparent with that. So when I think about Kaneko's body of work in Doi's, I think that they're very much equal. There's equal footing there. The design logic that they both use is about the same because Kaneko had Doi under his wing, and I think that it's important that Doi does show and talk about how much he respects Kaneko and his consideration for faithfulness versus inaccuracy. Because if we're also completely transparent, Kaneko does a lot of deviation all the time. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when I think that the design is too divorced from its original meaning. And I've talked about this before, but Aogami and Dagda are very funny because Dagda's personality is what Aogami should be, and vice versa, based on the mythology that we have for both characters. But that aside, I'm very much a Doi truther now. I went from being a hater in the past. If you followed me for years, you will recall me saying more than once that I don't like Doi's designs at all. My opinion has softened over time, but it's with researching for this video that I've come to realize Doi good, Doi great even. And I look forward to more of his designs because Nyami Nyami, Anansi, Amabie, a lot of his new designs are really good. And it really makes me think that Doi can take up this mantle and he can hold his own. But what do you think? Do you think that he's good? Let me know in the comments below, and also tell me your favorite Doi designs, because yeah, if you're one of the people who is a big fan of Doi in Trauma Center and you're gonna say something from Trauma Center, you get bonus points. But yeah, that's it for the video. Goodbye, fellow Megatenists.